What's up, everybody? It's Megan here with the Student Loan Planner podcast, and I'm taking over for Travis. He'll be back. We are today going to be chatting about a couple different things. I figured I'd address some tips for new grads who are entering repayment this month and next month, those that graduated back in May. I've got some recertification details I want to go through, some updates on forbearance, some success stories with recalculations of payments and switching to different plans. PSLF updates as well. We saw a lot of PSLF payment counts get updated recently and some forgiveness letters go out. And let's see, what else? I also want to chat a little bit about if repay comes back, what kind of loopholes might come back into the picture if repay comes back in the event that save is repealed. Before we get into things, actually, I want to say, hey, it's Scorpio season to all my Scorpios out there. Scorpio season starts tomorrow, October 23rd. I'm a Scorpio myself. My birthday is on the 25th. And I just want to let you know you're seen. Scorpios are great. Everybody on listening to this knows a Scorpio. They're said to be pretty intense people, passionate, magnetic, determined, devoted. They're intuitive, creative, thrill. They like to chase thrill. Maybe that's why I like the student loan world. I don't know. But just wanted to say happy birthday to those Scorpios coming up. All right, let's get into business though. New grads, new grads, new grads, new grads. You are now in the workforce, hopefully, likely, and you're getting into the swing of your new career. You're practicing your profession, you're practicing what you went to school for, and you've had a 6-month grace period that started back when you graduated in May, and that is coming to an end. So you've probably already gotten some notices this month or next, or coming up for next month where your grace period is ending. That's the 6-month period of time where you don't have to make payments and you have to make decisions on what repayment plan to go into or to consolidate. So some quick tips for you. I would suggest if you are someone who is pretty simple in the sense of you've been to school only once, in the sense of like you didn't have different enrollment periods, different periods of repayment in the past. Let's say all of your loans were borrowed like pretty consecutively. You've never paid on your loans before. For those folks, there's not really a need for you to consider consolidation unless you just value simplicity and things to look clean and neat on your statements. That's it. That's really all there is to it. So folks that have recently graduated, you are going to have multiple loans for every enrollment period. So it's not just like one big loan. It's you have multiple loans from the different semesters where you went to school. And so consolidation could be a way to just combine those loans together for simplification. And I do a lot of times suggest this right off the bat when somebody graduates in May, like, hey, it probably makes sense just to go ahead and consolidate. Because if you consolidate, it foregoes that 6-month grace period. Those that graduated in May, you guys went through kind of an interesting time because we had all this drama going on over the summer with the save plan and they shut down the online applications. So it didn't make consolidation super easy. You would have had to submit a paper application and you would have had to know all of your account numbers and list out all of those details on a paper application, which would have just been really difficult. So it's likely that a lot of folks who graduated in May have not consolidated. And so you might be asking, should I consolidate? And I think the simple answer is no, if you have a pretty simple background with your loans. So if you've never entered repayment in the past, there's not really a need for you to consolidate again, unless you just want it to look clean. Now, alternatively, if you're someone who did go to school in the past, maybe you went to undergrad, paid on your loans for 5 years, and then went back to grad school, and now you're entering repayment again for the second time, but with the rest of your new loans, it could make sense for you to consolidate. That could simplify your situation as well, but also the payment history that you had historically, the 5 years of payment history in this example, what happens, or what the language said after the IDR account adjustment expired was that starting September 1, if you consolidated loans with different payment counts, you'd get the weighted average of your existing payment history. So consolidations back in the day, they used to reset your payment count altogether. It was like restarting over. But now it's a weighted average. So it's not like it was during the IDR waiver where it's the highest payment count, but it's better than zero. And if you do have some payment history, if you consolidate now, that just means you'll at least get to retain some of it. Probably not a lot if your prior loans weren't a big portion of your balance, right? Because it's the weighted average. But that would be maybe something to consider and might be a reason for you to go ahead and consolidate if you're entering repayment here for the first or second time, technically, with loans that you had in repayment in the past. Thankfully, the online application for consolidation is up and running now. So it's a very simple application done online for free through the studentaid.gov website. So just go there and you can complete the consolidation. Timelines for consolidation right now are taking I'd say like 45 to 90 days. It used to take between 30 to 60 days. Lately, with all this drama going on in the student loan system, it's been taking a lot longer. So that's why, kind of going back to the simple case where maybe it doesn't make sense to consolidate, that's why I'm saying like maybe you shouldn't because it's going to take a long time for them to process it, and you probably just want to get going on your repayment journey. So all those things taken into account, I think that should give you some guidance on who should consolidate right now and who should not, or who doesn't need to or need to stress about it. And then the online applications to apply for an income-driven plan are on, the website as well. So that, thank goodness, those came back live for you guys entering repayment here after graduating, because otherwise you would have had to do a paper application, which is just harder. It's a little more work and a little more effort. But the online application is up, which is great. You just need to know what repayment plan you want to apply for. So if you're someone who's going towards public service loan forgiveness, working in a nonprofit or a government setting, you're going to need to apply for an income-driven plan, and you want to apply for the cheapest one available. At this time, the SAVE plan is on pause. It's shut down. We don't know what the fate of this plan is going to be. So I would suggest probably applying for IBR. That's going to be the cheapest income-driven plan. And if you did not borrow before 2014, that payment on IBR is going to be based on 10% of your discretionary income. There's not really another option at this point. Technically, you could apply for SAVE, but SAVE is in that limbo stage. So if you're looking at just getting going and working towards PSLF right now as soon as you can, go ahead and apply for IBR, would be my suggestion. Now, for those who are thinking about longer-term loan forgiveness, maybe your balance is a lot greater than your income, and it will be for the foreseeable future, then the 20-year forgiveness is still a thing at this time, especially with IBR, new IBR, I mean. So if you didn't borrow before 2014, you could apply for IBR. It technically is considered new IBR, which has a 10% calculation for your payment, and it's a 20-year timeline to forgiveness. If you do have loans older than 2014, then you will be on the old IBR plan. On the application, it's just going to say IBR. It's going to know which one you're eligible for, so you don't have to know which one to necessarily apply for. But if you have loans older than 2014, then the payment's going to be based on 15% of discretionary income, and it has a 25-year timeline to forgiveness. So if you're someone who, again, your balance is larger than your income, you're thinking about that longer term forgiveness, or really just needing an affordable payment right now, IBR would still be the way to go to apply for, since SAVE is paused. Now, somebody could apply for SAVE. They have this on the application, but they're just going to throw you straight into forbearance after they approve the SAVE plan. I think they're giving it a 60-day like administrative forbearance period for them to figure out what's going to happen with SAVE. So you're not actually going to be put on SAVE. You're just going to be put into forbearance while they wait and see. So that's why I'm leaning more towards, hey, it probably just makes sense to go and apply for IBR. All right, so new grads, I think that should get you going in the right direction. If you're someone who is planning on paying the loans off, maybe your balance is about the same as your income or less than your income, you're not working in public service, then you could consider going and looking at refinancing. Refinancing is the process of taking the loan out of the federal system to a private company. They restructure that loan or they pay off the federal loan and then give you a payment based on a term that you commit to. So it could be as far out as 20 years, but you determine the term, you pick the term. And ideally, you're only doing this if you can get a lower interest rate and if you're okay with the risks of leaving the federal system. What I mean by that is the federal system is going to be more generous, just factually, with the available forbearance, with income driven plans, and also just with some of the stuff that typically happens with federal student loans. Like if there's like a worldwide issue like COVID, you'll be able to have more generous forbearance availability or availability of not having to pay the loans with maybe some interest benefits. So I hesitate to say, yeah, go and refinance if you feel like you need a little more flexibility because you do walk away from flexibility leaving the federal system to go and refinance. Now, refinancing is not a bad option. Of course, it could be a good option for you. You just have to make sure that it's the right option for you and you feel comfortable and committed to what that monthly payment is going to be for the private refinance. You've thought about it from a budgeting perspective, from a job stability perspective. You know for sure that forgiveness was not something that you were interested in or mathematically wasn't going to work out. So just make sure that you've done that due diligence before you go ahead and bite the bullet for refinancing if you're in the payback bucket of how to tackle student loans. All right, so I think that wraps things up for new grads. Recertification. So let's talk about what recertification timelines look like right now. We've been seeing a lot of changes with recertifications. So if you have been on an income-driven plan, recertification means it's time for you to update your income with the student loan system. That's how they keep your income-driven plan current and up to date with your current income. You're only supposed to have to do this every 12 months. We know that COVID affected that, where they did extend and continue to extend your need to recertify your income because we were in that COVID forbearance for so long. And if you graduated in the midst of the COVID forbearance, similar story, you could have applied for an income-driven plan, but you wouldn't have had to pay for a while and you wouldn't have had to update your income for a while. So now we're starting to see people actually have to recertify because payments kicked back in from COVID September of last year. So it's been a year. And those that are not on the SAVE plan, that are not in the forbearance status, so those who are on pay or on IBR or ICR, are getting notices, or they will be soon, that they need to be updating their income. Folks on SAVE may also be getting these recertification notices, but it's a little confusing because you're not paying right now. So what's happening is we've been seeing some folks get their recertification due dates pushed into 2025. And we've seen multiple cases where they've been pushed 12 months. And this is for both people on SAVE and for folks, we've seen a couple folks where this has happened for those that are on pay or IBR, which is kind of interesting. I think a couple that I saw weren't quite 12 months. They were pushed just later on into 2025, where they don't have to update their income until 2025, which is interesting. But we have seen some get pushed into 12 months into later 2025, like October, November of 2025. So you can check your recertification date through studentaid.gov. That's maybe the first place I would check. Go sign into your portal. You have to click on view loan details like probably 4 or 5 times. I'm not kidding. So when you look at your dashboard, there's going to be a button next to, or like a clickable link next to your loans where it says view loan details. You click that, it'll take you to your loan details. You click view loan details again, and you keep going on down the line until it gets you to a point where it shows the raw details of your loan, and it will to the right have something that says IDR anniversary date. That's when you are supposed to have to, when the payment actually changes, I mean. If it says something soon, stay tuned because I've got some timeline details But if not, it could say 2025, and that just means that you don't have to worry about updating your income until later, which is could be nice because maybe your income is higher now. Timeline wise, on the studentaid.gov website, they did list out a pretty detailed timeline for what recertification should look like with your servicer. And your official IDR anniversary date can't be before November 2024. Basically, that's what the studentaid.gov website says, is that you shouldn't have had to update your income, or I should say your payment shouldn't have had to change before November 2024 unless you implemented a change. So that's if you updated your income sooner, or if you made a switch to a different plan, or you consolidated and had to reapply for a plan, that's different. I'm talking about just simple recertification. Now, they say that you'll hear from your servicer and you'll have steps to take before that due date to remain on your IDR plan. So, their timeline, what they're saying is 3 months before, your servicer reaches out to you about recertifying your IDR plan. We did see some of this where a lot of folks got what seemed to be these like automated emails or responses about their IDR anniversary date. And they were very confusing. I think we talked about that on another episode where it would show like your payment for a certain amount of months starting on a certain date. And then there would be another date where the payment explodes, right? Where it's much, much higher. And that was showing like, hey, if you don't recertify your income by that date, your payment's going to jump up to the standard 10-year plan. So I think a lot of folks got those, but that could have been within the past 3 months. I also hesitate to say that everybody would have gotten these because of the save situation and because 3 months ago we were still, again, we've been having a lot of drama in the student loan system. So what's supposed to happen is you're going to get information about your recertification 3 months in advance, is what the studentaid.gov website says. Now, I know that has not been happening. Or if it has been happening, it's been kind of confusing, which I think you may have remembered. I think we talked about this on an episode as well, where notices went out that explain the timeline of your IDR plan. I think that it had something like that in the title, where it would list out, hey, here's your payment. This is when it's starting. It would look normal, like what you expected your payment to be. And then it would show a date in the future where the payment explodes, like where it increases quite a bit. And that was supposed to show, like, hey, if you don't recertify your income, this is what the payment will change to in this month in the future, which basically it's flipping you on the standard 10-year plan. So I do think those notices went out to a lot of people, maybe not everybody though, especially probably not people on Save because of this whole Save drama going on. But if you're on Pay or IBR or ICR, you're supposed to get notice 3 months before your payment changes to outline a timeline for you to recertify. And what's due, typically the due date for your recertification or submitting your income documentation is 35 days before your IDR anniversary. So let's say your IDR anniversary is, let's see, November 23rd. Then that means 35 days before that, which would be October 18th, I think, give or take a day, would be when your income information is due to the loan servicer for them to be able to have time to calculate the updated payment, right? So that's one timeline right there. Now, if you miss this 35 days before deadline to give them your income information, all that means is your next billing statement that's generally going to be auto-generated. The next billing statement is not going to reflect the information you provided correctly. Like it's not going to have that updated calculation because you didn't give them enough time to do that before that auto notice goes out. But one other deadline to know about is 10 days before. So 10 days before your anniversary date is the last date you can turn in your income documents. If you miss this deadline, you'll be taken off the IDR plan and put onto a different plan, which means that your monthly payment will no longer be based on income and will likely increase. That means we're put on that standard 10-year plan. So 10 days before your IDR anniversary date is the drop dead date where you need to be submitting something or just know what the consequences are, which is going to be getting kicked off the IDR plan. So I have been telling folks, because what's been confusing is some people are getting their IDR anniversary dates pushed automatically. Why? I don't know. I think it's because of this save drama that's going on and the servicers needing more time. So a lot of people are confused as to, hey, I've got this notice that I need to submit my income documentation by, let's say, like November 15th or whatever date it is, but are they going to push my date? I don't want to update my income if I don't have to. And so what I'm suggesting is if you're still in that limbo period, if you're waiting to see if you have to update your income, 35 days before is when the information is due. That's one deadline. But the drop dead date, when you have to give them income information before you get dropped from the plan, is 10 days before that IDR anniversary date. So that's the latest you could wait to submit your income documentation. Maybe give it an extra day, like 11 days before, just to be safe. Until you give them income information, just in case your IDR anniversary date changes. So if this is for folks who are concerned about it maybe changing and they know their payment's going to go up, so they're going to try to, take advantage of if they do postpone recertification. This could be one way, is to really just wait last minute to submit this income documentation. So that's the timeline for recertification that's on the studentaid.gov website. Pay attention to what your servicer notice says, though, because it will give you some dates that you need to be looking at and considering. But I think that could hopefully help settle your mind on if you're getting payment notices or recertification notices and you're thinking that they might be postponing your payment, especially if you're on save. Because if you're on save, it seems like they're pushing those recertifications out because of this save drama. So to kind of round this out or bring it home, they do have an example on the website, the studentaid.gov website, that talks about the timeline. It says, for example, say your IDR anniversary date is November 1, 2024. You'll first hear from your servicer about recertifying in August of 2024. So that might have been some of those like confusing notices that went out to a lot of people back in August or September. Then your income information will be due September 25th. That's 35 days before November 1st. And the absolute latest you could turn in your information will be October 22nd, 2024, which that is 10 days before November 1, because we have 31 days in October, before you're placed on the standard plan. So hopefully this helps if you're a little concerned about like what the servicer is saying right now. You're not sure if you're going to have to make payments. You're not sure if they're going to postpone things or if, things like that. I think that hopefully can give you an idea of a timeline and kind of the drop dead date there. All right, next up, forbearance. A lot of folks are in forbearance right now because of the save debacle, like we've talked about, and their forbearance dates are supposedly expiring or coming to an end, and a payment is going to be due soon. I don't think this is actually true. I think what the servicers were doing is putting just a date and time, putting a peg down on a date for a day just to have like a touch point or like something that they have to check back in on by that point. And they're going to be pushing this again because the save situation is not figured out. So those who are in forbearance who have a due date coming up for a payment or have like an income recertification date coming up and they're kind of concerned about it, I'm thinking the forbearance is going to automatically get extended. But if not, especially if you're someone who tried to apply for the save plan before, like right before they shut everything off and your application never got accepted, and you want to wait to see what the fate of save is before you pay anything, you are probably going to, that person in that scenario might have to call and ask for another forbearance. But for those who were on the save plan and who are in that save forbearance, I think it's automatically going to get extended. So really the only people that need to be requesting another forbearance are those who are waiting to be approved for save that don't want to pay until we know what the fate of that plan is, or until the save plan is saved and we can make payments on that plan. You can call and ask for forbearance from your loan servicer. your loan servicer details. Hopefully you have access to your online portal where you could give them a call, or you could even maybe live chat them. A lot of the servicers have the chat feature now on their website if you don't want to sit on on hold for a while. But that's what I would do in those scenarios if we're in that forbearance. All right. So another thing I've noticed, some recalculations have been getting processed. So we have had situations where folks, their income has gone down and they were on the pay plan or the IBR plan or ICR. So those folks are in repayment and they were having a hard time recalculating their payment because the IDR applications were shut off online. Recalculations have now been able to get processed from that online application, and we have been seeing those get processed. So that's good. It does seem like the online applications are working their way through the system. You can also still apply online or using a paper application if needed. Folks who might still need to use a paper application would be those using alternative documentation of income versus letting them link straight back to your tax return. There's a number of reasons why you might be doing that. Maybe your income is less than what that tax return says now. Maybe we're in a community property state filing separately, and our spouse's income makes our income on the tax return look higher. So alternative documentation is typically we're going to have to do a paper application for that. So those might be the scenarios where we're still doing online. Alrighty. Now my PSLF people, you probably saw some payment count updates. While maybe they weren't correct or, completed, you probably did get some kind of correspondence about your payment count getting updated, or at least your PSLF situation getting looked at. So I think that's progress, right? Not super happy with things not getting done, of course, if you've been waiting a long time, but we're seeing some progress, which I think is a positive thing. And it seems like, so a lot of people did get forgiveness letters. So those that have hit 120 months towards PSLF, they got some kind of letter confirming the qualifying payment count. And really you're just waiting for the forgiveness to happen. So if you're in that situation where you know for sure you have 120 qualifying payments, they've already qualified it, you're just kind of sitting in limbo waiting for them to forgive the balance, you can call and ask for a forbearance if your payment due date is coming up soon. So if you've been in forbearance waiting for them to process it and that's coming to an end because it's taking them forever, you can certainly ask for another forbearance. That is certainly an option. It seems like, and I've seen multiple reps at these loan servicers or studentaid.gov kind of say the same thing, where the loan forgiveness for those folks, it's not in any particular order. It seems like they've used the term lottery. It's like a lottery for who gets the balance forgiven when. But it should be happening soon. I think some of the confusion around loan forgiveness in general is going to get cleared up in this October 24th hearing. That's next. Well, actually, it's this Thursday when you're listening to this. So this Thursday, we'll have some updates. And then also, I'll mention too. So this Thursday, there's that hearing. We may not have a lot of information that exact day, but the days to follow, we'll have some information that we'll be able to report on. So we are likely going to do maybe some kind of live on Instagram or some kind of emergency email that goes out depending on the information that's available. What's kind of cool is a lot of the team is going to be at a conference called FinCon for financial content creators in Atlanta, my hometown. So I'll have Travis here. We'll have Sim, Dan, Connor, Angie, a couple others. Meredith is going to be here. So we'll have a lot of folks that are in town together while this information is coming out. So that could be kind of cool because we'll all be there being able to like dissect it and report on it. So we will report on things as soon as we know what that information means or what we need to take from that. But I think it will be kind of cool that we're all together to be able to see that unfold all together as well. But yeah, next week we'll get some information from that hearing. I think PSLF forgiveness will probably, I would guess, speed up after that point, after that hearing has happened. after we know that, hey, it's green light for going ahead and processing PSLF applications, that's, I think that's what's going to happen. Then there might be a waterfall of things that happen after that, hopefully. But with that said, let's see. There's also the election November 5th that could also have some information that will be helpful for us to be able to digest and relay to you guys. So we'll be, I think over the next couple weeks, there's going to be a lot of new stuff or a lot of just information that we need to break down. So we will be here for you. Don't worry. All right. And then lastly, so I think I wanted to chat just a little bit about, hey, what if repay comes back? What if save is repealed, but repay comes back? Repay, a lot of folks got thrown onto save from repay. There was no choice to keep repay because save was essentially replacing repay. Repay was a plan that's based on 10% of discretionary income. The catch here with this plan compared to pay or to new IBR, though, is that repay requires you to include spousal income as part of the payment calculation if you're married. If you're separated or going through a divorce, you can just keep the payment off of your own income. But if you are married, still married, filing taxes as a married couple, repay is going to require your spousal income to be included in the payment calculation. So that's a downside to repay. But there are some things that we can play around with here, especially for those who have spouses that both have student loan debt. So if you and your spouse both have student loan debt, we can strategically use what's called I think we called it back in the past, a double debt loophole, which is where we take advantage of the fact that repay does in fact take into account spousal income, but also they have to proportionalize that spousal income payment between who has how much of the debt. And that just means that a person, like one of the spouses in the couple, if somebody has a lower balance, let's say, then the repay payment for that lower balance spouse is going to be lower because proportionally, they're looking at you as a household at that point. They're looking at your balance. They're looking at your spouse's balance. And they're saying, hey, here's our household payment, but spouse two only has 20% of the household debt. So 20% of that repay payment is going to go to spouse two that's got the lower balance. So that could work to a benefit in situations where we're looking at loan forgiveness, where the spouse with a lower balance, repay might still work out well. Because even though it takes into account spousal income, it's still going to proportionalize that payment. And if you have a lower balance, the lower payment will be attributed to you. And on the flip side, for the spouse that has the higher debt load, so where maybe the repay payment would be 80% of the household income payment calculation, we could also look at not being on repay. We could look at being on IBR, which income-based repayment allows us to exclude spousal income as long as we're filing separately. And that IBR payment off of just your income, even though you have the higher balance, could be lower than what the repay calculation would be. So that's called the double debt loophole. It's kind of, as it sounds, it's kind of complicated. There's a little nuance that goes into it. But that is something that we have in our back pocket for those that are pursuing loan forgiveness. When you're married, you've got a spouse that has student loan debt too, and repay might come back. That might still be something that we can use pretty strategically, even though it sounds like it might be a bad thing that repay, requires spousal income, because you don't have to be on the same plan as your spouse. That's the key there. So that's one thing. And repay also, I think Travis mentioned this in a prior podcast, but repay does not have a payment cap. So we've talked a little bit over the past couple podcasts about how payment caps are a little dangerous for our higher income earners who are trying to go towards loan forgiveness. And maybe they're really close to PSLF or they're really close to the longer term forgiveness. And they were, saves payment was going to be really low. If save is repealed, we're not going to be potentially not eligible for IBR if we fall above that payment cap. So payment caps, I think one of the episodes is labeled payment caps are dangerous. So go back to that and listen to that to understand the payment cap situation. But the positive to repay is there's no payment cap. So that means if we're like at the finish line of PSLF, we will, if repay comes back, we'll have an option that we could switch to without having to worry about a payment cap, because repay's payment calculation will just be whatever it is based on your income, which could really help somebody who's just really at the last couple, months of their timeline or really close to the end. So I don't want folks to be scared of repay if it comes back. I think there are still some planning techniques that we can use to really make sure that we're saving as much money as possible. We're rolling with the punches and we're still getting to the end result that we were planning on. It just might look a little different, of course, with a different plan and with different rules. But that's one thing I wanted to mention about repay. If it comes back, we might have some alternative options, alternative loopholes to consider. So I think that's all I've got for you today. Travis, I think we'll be back next week, or it'll be potentially a combination of us, depending on what's going on at the hearing and the conference that we're at. But we will be here for you. We will help you, digest and understand what your next steps need to be, depending on what comes out of that hearing next week and what comes out of the election in a couple weeks. I know this is a stressful time. It really is a stressful time, and it's frustrating, to just not know exactly what your next steps are going to be or not know what to expect. I'm a planner, probably type A type of person, so this kind of thing really, grinds my gears when I don't know how to plan for the foreseeable future with some of these things that are just so unknown. So I feel and can sympathize with you on just your frustration, but know that we're here. We're going to be producing a bunch of content depending on how we need to respond to what's going to come. So stay tuned. Follow us on our channels. Stay tuned to our podcast. Make sure that you're subscribed to our newsletter. We're on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. We're on, all the channels at this point. So, but I hope this was helpful for just maybe a couple like nuggets of information on what we're seeing and just anything that could be relevant to your situation. And thanks for hanging out with me today, letting me take over for Travis. I'll see you in the next one, and I hope you have a good week.